obviously there's only one match that can be on the front cover. It is obviously Hogan and Andre. So much of the build to this huge super show was focused on this historic showdown. Build, of course, as the first time they'd ever squared off, even though it was probably about the 100th by this point.
I think they had squared off. I calculated. And I was really nervous about it because I knew that if my calculations were wrong, there would be people who would know. Mm-hmm. And so I estimated that if you count tag team matches, they had been on the opposite side of the ring from each other in excess of 60 times.
Wow. And I wonder how many of those times involved Andre being body slammed as well.
Well, I saw him body slammed twice in 1980. I saw him body slammed at Madison Square Garden, and I saw him body slammed at Shea Stadium, home of baseball's New York Mets. So that was just my experience. But then, like, I interviewed Jacques Rougeau from the Rougeau brothers, and, he's, you might say, third generation, because I think his great uncle had been a wrestler. And his father and uncle were very well known in Montreal as both wrestlers and promoters. And he had been on a show in Quebec in which Andre wrestled Hulk Hogan. And he said he was so caught up in the hype. And he was a wrestler and he knew how the game was played. He forgot that they'd wrestled each other.
Yeah, I mean, it was an absolute masterclass of storytelling. And I mean, obviously, it still goes down in all the highlight reels all these years later. What was it that made that, do you think, so mythical and larger than life at the time, Keith? Why did that feud resonate so much as the marquee match?
It's interesting. It was Hulkamania was at its height. So, perhaps 2 years later, it might not have meant as much. Everyone kind of knew Andre was on the decline. And behind the scenes, Andre wanted to give Hulk Hogan this gift. And at least from a North American standpoint, Andre had always been a hero. And now he had Bobby Heenan in his ear, and he had taken on the villainous ways of his manager. And so, but at the same time, like the storylines today, you think about it. And Andre's resentful that Hogan, who's supposed to be his best friend and brother, never offered him a title shot. Now, of course, you could say, well, he never asked for one. So how would Hogan have known? But it was just enough to get you thinking like, yeah, well, maybe Andre has to do this. Maybe he has to be a little vicious. I mean, maybe Hogan's gone a little selfish over here. There's more people on this earth than Hulk Hogan. Maybe he should have thought about what it feels like to be Andre. And everyone from adults to small children was caught up in that. And, and again, it was at the right point of their careers. And when I was talking to Dave Meltzer, who does the Wrestling Observer newsletter and is the foremost authority on professional wrestling of anyone who's ever walked the earth, I said, fans hadn't seen a heel André the Giant before. And Dave Meltzer said, well, I did. I said, yeah, but you're Dave Meltzer and you go to Japan and watch matches. But if you're 9 years old, you weren't sitting at the Tokyo Dome watching them wrestle.
And I guess to bring it up to date for the 9-year-olds who are watching wrestling now, I mean, it's the equivalent of John Cena now, isn't it? Really, like
yes, I mean, Brian Solomon.
Yeah,
Brian Solomon, who writes for our magazine, Inside the Ropes magazine. Brian Solomon has a son who I believe is 7 years old, and he told me a story where, he was watching it with his son and a group of his son's friends, and his son was wearing his John Cena wristbands and his hat. And his son watched John Cena turn against Cody Rhodes, and his son took off the wristbands, took off the hat, and said, Daddy, I don't want to wear these anymore.
Well, that's powerful. I mean, that's
Yeah,
wrestling storytelling. I mean, my
yeah,
my son's 6. He loves John Cena, and I was explaining to John Cena that because he doesn't really watch for product yet. His experience really is action figures and video games. I'm
yeah,
still at the point where I'm not sure at what point I really want him to see it. I was 8 years old when I started, and also the product I was watching was far more suited, I think, to a young child than today's product. So I'm still on the fence about what point he really sees wrestling, but he knows enough of John Cena that he loves John Cena. And I was explaining, well, John Cena's a bad guy now, and he's like, oh, I still love John Cena. I want to see him. So it's I mean, yeah, I mean it's the equivalent, isn't it? But I hadn't thought of that until now, but maybe this was like Andre's point. Andre knows he's on the way out. And
yeah.
not only does it make sense for storyline, but also to have the joy of playing the heel and the experience of being booed by the crowd is probably something you really want to experience as a headliner before your time runs
It's funny you say that because, Andre was very close with Timmy White, the referee.
out. Hmm.
And, you're talking about slow periods and boom periods. I remember during the Attitude Era, Tim White saying to me, all these young people who just started the company, they think like this Attitude Era is going to go on forever. Wait until the cycle goes the other way. Boy, are they going to be in for a rude awakening. And Timmy White said, because at the end of the book, I talk about Europe, particularly the UK, but how the wrestlers in the UK who come out of joint promotions and All Star, they're awed by when they finally get to see the tape 3 months later. They're awed by the spectacle of WrestleMania 3, but they're thinking, well, whoever this Vince McMahon is, he's never going to come over here. Look how busy he is over in the United States. And then a month or two after that, or a couple of months after that conversation, WWE runs its first show in Paris. And the wrestlers over there are like, oh my God, he's coming here too. But I remember Timmy White, the referee, saying he went over to France for that show with Andre. And Andre, true to character, was healing it up over there in France, where he comes from, where his family was still living. And he said that Andre felt a little weird about it, but he put the business first.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. A consummate professional, and obviously goes into WrestleMania 3. He knows the job he has to do. He's obviously, as you say, on the way out health wise. This is really Andre's one of his well,
One of his swan
it's his last
songs.
big, really, really big moment.
Right. Even though he had a tag team title run
Yeah,
with Haku and an eventual babyface turn,
yeah.
he was not the Andre he even was 3 years earlier.